All right, here's going to be an example from section 10.4 about inscribed angles. So what you want to remember, the only really thing that we need to know, well, first of all, an inscribed angle is an angle like angle 1 here, where you can see that the vertex of the angle is on the circle. And what we learned was that the measure of an inscribed angle is always going to be half of the arc that it intercepts. So here we can see angle 1 is an inscribed angle, angle 2 is an inscribed angle, angle 3 is an inscribed angle, angle 4 is something different, we'll get to that. Angle 5 also an inscribed angle. So what we have to remember is that because an inscribed angle, the measure of an inscribed angle is equal to half the measure of the arc, which we know is part of a circle, we use this given information here at the top to figure out some of these measures. So let's look at some of this information that we have here. Let's get ourselves a nice purple, pinkish, I suppose. So it says in circle F, so we know F is the center point. The measure of arc WX is 20. So let's just write that in. Well, there's not a lot of room there, so let's just draw an arrow here from this 20. Oops, wrong tool. Sorry. 20. There's WX, and that's 20. Then XY, that's 40. So that's going to be right there. UZ, this whole thing UZ here, that is going to be, I'll outline that so we know it's the whole thing UZ, is 108. And you'll have to forgive my terrible handwriting as I get used to this thing. And it says the measure of UW is the measure of arc UW is equal to the measure of arc YZ. So we know that this little guy, if they have the same measure, they are congruent. Now, a great way to start for these problems is always just to figure out what's the measure of all the arcs around the circle, or all the important ones anyways. And I can see right now that angle 1, let's get a different color here to talk about angle 1 real quick. Let's say a blue here. Angle 1 right here, I can see that this angle, outline it, again doing my best as I get used to this, goes to here to UW, so it's going to be talking about this arc here. So I need to know the measure of that arc. So in order to find the measure of that arc, because it's not given to me, what I'm going to need to remember is that all the angles all the way around the circle add up to be 360 degrees. So let's get back to our pink here and talk about these arcs. So if this little guy is 20, this little guy XY is 40, and then UZ is 108. And again, these are arc measures, so they're in degrees. And then these two are congruent. We should be able to add the ones we know, add those up, and then subtract from 360 and divide by 2. So let's go ahead and do that. So we know that we have 20, and again, excuse my handwriting while I get used to this fancy new tool. 20, and then 40, and then 108. So we'll add these three up. That's going to be 168. Okay, and so that's these three, arc WX, arc XY, and arc UZ. That's the measure of those three. And so UW and YZ, those two arcs, have to be the remainder after we subtract from 360. So we take 360, which is the whole circle, minus 168, which is the three arcs that we know, and that gives us 192. We do that subtraction, and that's 192 degrees for the total of arc YZ and arc UW. And since they're congruent, I can just divide that in half. So we take 192, divide by 2, and we get 96. So that means that arc YZ has a measure of 96 degrees. Put our degrees here with this 108 because it's an arc measure, so it's in degrees, different from the arc length we talked about earlier. And then UW is also 96 degrees. Okay. Good. Now, like I said, we're talking about the measure of the angles here. And an inscribed angle, like angle 1, its measure is half of the arc that it intercepts. So when I look at angle 1, it goes to arc UW. So the measure of angle 1 should be half of that. So measure angle, sorry about my writing, 1 is equal to half of 96 degrees, which is 48 degrees. All right, now let's move on to another angle. Let's get yellow this time. Let's talk about angle 2. Now if I look at angle 2, start here at the vertex of angle 2, just trace it until it hits the circle again. So it goes there to X, and then there to Y. So angle 2 goes to arc XY, which they said from the beginning was 40. So the measure of angle 2 is equal to half of the arc that it creates or intercepts in the circle. So that should be half of 40, which is of course 20. Keep going. Let's get a different color again. Maybe a green this time. Now angle 3, again I like to trace it to see where it is going to end up. Angle 3, I start at the vertex, angle 3, and go down to here to Z. Then I'm going to have to cover back up this yellow. So angle 3 with my squiggly terrible lines goes to arc UZ. And again, the inscribed angle is equal to, the measure of the inscribed angle is equal to half the measure of the arc it creates. So it goes to arc UZ, so which has a measure of 108 degrees. So the measure of arc, or the measure of angle, excuse me, angle 3 is equal to 108 degrees, the arc measure, divided by 2, which is 54 degrees. Now something we want to notice, we'll come back to angle 4 in just a second, but if I look at angle 5, let's get a nice, let's say, light blue here. If I look at angle 5, again, here's my vertex for angle 5, vertex on the circle, so it's an inscribed circle, or inscribed angle. And I trace that out, it goes to U, and it goes to Z. So angle 5 goes to the same arc as angle 3. And since they're both inscribed angles going to the same arc, they would both be half of that, and so they're both congruent. So this is also equal to, this 54 from angle 3 is also equal to the measure of angle 5. And again, that's because angle 3 goes to arc UZ, And angle 5 also goes to arc UZ. Now for angle 4, and I know we're getting a little bit jumbled up here, but angle 4 is not an inscribed angle because its vertex is not on the circle. It's inside the circle, but it's not on the circle, which the circle, remember, is just the curvy line. So angle 4, I'm going to have to do something else. And something that we always want to be on the lookout for is triangles. And so I see a triangle with angle 4 as part of my triangle. I'm going to outline that right now. And so I have a triangle here in black formed by angles 2, 3, and 4. And we know, of course, that all three angles in a triangle have to add up to be 180 degrees. Excuse me. So angle 2 was 20 degrees, plus angle 3 was 54 degrees, plus the measure of angle 4, which we're looking for. Those three added together should equal 180 degrees to make a triangle. And then we just simplify and solve. 74, and you add those two together, plus the measure of angle 4 is equal to 180. I like to show my work in a different color. Minus 74, minus 74. And the measure of angle 4 is equal to 180 minus 74, or 106. And those are our answers. So again, the key to this problem is remembering that the measure of an inscribed angle is equal to 1/2 the measure of the arc it creates. And so we did that several times here. The measure of angle 1 was equal to half of 96 because angle 1 goes to this arc UW, which we figured out was 96 up here. And that's pretty much what we need to know from section 10.4. Good luck.